She gave food and water to a poor blind homeless man every day, until he said, "I'm a millionaire." "Hey Zainab, your porridge is burning." Auntie Folaka's voice, coming from the vegetable stall next door, cut through the hot morning air, making Zainab dash back to the pot of pap, bubbling over a charcoal stove. With a wooden spoon in hand, she stirred the bottom quickly, releasing the familiar smell of cornmeal and milk. Small clouds of steam rose like promises of a new day. She sighed in relief when she realized the rest could still be saved. There, amid the blaring horns and overlapping voices of the busy streets of Ajagunle, a modest and vibrant neighborhood in Lagos, Zainab began yet another day of struggle. Her makeshift stand, made from torn tarps and scrap wood, sat right on the corner where two dirt roads met, beneath the shade of an old mango tree. Everyone knew her, not just for the hot porridge and fried dough balls, but for the smile she insisted on wearing, even when the world seemed too heavy. Zainab was only 26, but her eyes held the calm of someone who had seen far more than she should have. Her hair was tucked beneath a faded headscarf, and her feet were in worn-out flip-flops, the soles nearly smooth. Her loose t-shirt and patterned skirt bore small oil stains, souvenirs of the days that blurred into one another. She lived alone in a concrete room just a few blocks away, a cramped space without electricity or running water, with only a thin mattress on the floor, a plastic basin, and a makeshift three-stone stove in the yard. Her parents had died when she was still a teenager. Since then, she had supported herself with her own hands and a faith that never wavered. Selling food in the early morning and late afternoon was what kept a plate on her table, and maybe a little change for the next day. And even so, Zainab shared, "Here you go, Malam Musa," she said that morning, handing over a plastic cup of cool water and a small plate with 2 hot dough balls. "They're still steaming. Eat them while they're good." The old man sitting on the sidewalk beside her, Stan didn't reply immediately. With his eyes covered by a white cloth tied tightly behind his head and a wooden cane between his knees, he seemed as still as a stone. Most passers-by didn't notice him. Some looked with disdain. Others crossed the street to avoid walking too close. A few snickered behind cupped hands. But Zainab saw Malam Musa every single day. "Thank you very much, daughter," he finally said, his voice hoarse and gentle. "May Allah multiply what you have." She smiled, sitting for a moment beside the makeshift wooden bench he leaned on. "I don't have much, Malam," she replied, "but if I were in your shoes, I'd hope someone would do the same for me." That was their routine. Every single day, without fail, Malam Musa appeared at the same spot just after 7. And every single day, Zainab set aside a portion of her food, even when she barely sold anything, and gave it to him without expecting anything in return. He never asked, never reached out his hand. He just sat in silence as if he expected to be forgotten. But Zainab never forgot him. That day, as she washed bowls and wiped down the counter with a wet rag, Auntie Folake watched her with narrowed eyes and crossed arms. "Zainab, my daughter," the woman said, biting into a piece of avocado, "you've got a good heart, but be careful it doesn't lead you into hunger. You give too much food to that old blind man." Zainab smiled, not pausing her work. "Auntie, giving a little of what I have has never left me with nothing. What comes back is always greater." The woman snorted and shook her head. "I just hope that soft heart of yours doesn't make you forget to take care of yourself." Malam Musa stayed until late morning. Zainab kept an eye on him from time to time, always making sure he was okay. And even with the rush of customers honking dust and heat, she maintained the same tenderness whenever she spoke to him. A young man walked by, spat on the ground, and whispered to a friend, "That woman feeds that filthy blind man every day. Must be waiting for a miracle, or a husband." Zainab heard it but didn't react. She just kept stirring the porridge gently, as if each turn of the spoon was an act of hope against the world's indifference. The sun was high when Malam Musa finally stood, feeling the ground with his cane. "I'll go now, daughter. May your day be filled with light," he said. "See you tomorrow, Malam. There'll always be water and food waiting for you here." He nodded and walked away slowly, disappearing around the bend as he always did. Zainab gathered her utensils and sat for a moment on the little stool out front. The heat was intense, but the mango tree's shade offered just enough breeze for a brief rest. Her stomach growled, but she didn't complain. She was used to eating last. Far from there, no one would guess that something rare was happening on that forgotten corner of Ajagunle. Kindness without an audience, silent generosity, a simple act of humanity amid the rush of daily life. Zainab had no idea that the man she fed every day was hiding more than just blind eyes. And soon, that simple gesture would change the course of her life forever. "You again, Malam Musa?" yelled a skinny boy with a bag of cold water slung over his shoulder. "Gonna sit there all day like always?" The old blind man didn't respond. Sitting on the same sidewalk as always, his back hunched and his cane leaning against his shoulder, he simply turned his head slightly in the direction of the voice, as if trying to recognize the tone, but without reacting. Zainab saw the scene from across the counter and frowned. She wiped her hands on her floral apron and walked over with firm steps. "Hey boy," she called out, "if you're not going to help, don't mock." The boy scoffed and walked off grumbling, shaking his water bag toward the cars in the street. Zainab turned back to the old man and placed a small tray on his lap. "Fresh porridge, and today it's got banana slices," she said with a smile, "and a cup of cold water just how you like it." Malam Musa carefully touched the edge of the bowl, as if measuring the world with his fingertips. "You're like a beam of light coming through a crack in the wall, Zainab. Small, but you shine where no one else looks." She laughed, glancing away, a little embarrassed. "You speak too beautifully for someone who says he can't see a thing," she teased, half joking. He tilted his head slightly. "Sometimes eyes deceive more than they help." Every day at the same time, Malam Musa appeared, always with the white cloth covering his eyes, the cane in hand, his feet shuffling over the uneven stones. He never spoke loudly, never begged for anything. He just sat there beside Zainab's stand, as if that corner was the only place where he still existed. People did notice, but not in the right way. "Look at that useless blind man again," muttered one of the motorbike taxi drivers parked at the corner. "He's not worth anything, just taking up space." "Bet he's faking it, probably not even blind, just trying to get free food," said a woman selling clothes from a rack nearby. But Zainab never replied, and even though she heard these comments almost daily, she kept them to herself. Instead of defending herself, she kept doing what her heart told her to do: serve. Sometimes it was a small plate of akara, bean fritters. Other times it was pap with milk. When things were tight and she had only a piece of roasted yam, she still shared. And if she didn't have food ready, she at least offered cold water, taken from her blue drum filled with ice she bought before sunrise. Malam Musa noticed every gesture, every detail. Despite his apparent blindness, he always thanked her with carefully chosen words and a serenity that didn't match the image of misery others saw. "No one else does this for me," he said once, holding the cup with both hands. "Not even when I could see." Zainab sat beside him that day. She was tired. Sales had been slow, and she had only eaten what was left in the pot. She looked around at the movement in the street, the noise of the cars, the voices of vendors, and then fixed her gaze on nothing in particular. "I think life taught me to give, even when no one ever gave me anything." He nodded slowly. "You give like you breathe, as if it's the only way to stay alive." She smiled, this time with eyes brimming with tears. That week, foot traffic at the stand increased. A nearby school had started holiday tutoring sessions, and lots of children came by to buy porridge or fritters. Still, Zainab didn't stop setting aside a portion for Malam Musa. One woman noticed and couldn't stay quiet. "Zainab, honestly," she said, hands on her hips, "there are so many kids here who need to eat, and you're giving food to an old man who can't even work." Zainab looked at her kindly but firmly. "Children have parents, schools, neighbors. Who does he have?" The woman fell silent for a moment, then muttered something and walked off with her bag of rice. As the days passed, the bond between them deepened. It wasn't just friendship, nor simply charity. It was something else. It was as if time stopped on that little patch of sidewalk, as if two weary souls met and recognized each other, even without saying much. "Zainab," Malam Musa said one afternoon after eating a fritter, a shy smile on his lips, If one day I disappear from here, will you remember me? She stopped wiping the counter and looked at him surprised. You talk like you're going to vanish all of a sudden. Just thinking. Sometimes life takes us down unexpected paths. She shook her head, frowning. Don't say that, Mallam. You'll be here tomorrow, like always. I've already set the porridge aside. He smiled, then let it be so. As the sun set, tinting the mango leaves and the tarp over the stand in orange, Zainab sat for a moment on the cracked cement step. She watched the old man slowly walk away, his cane drawing lines in the dusty road. That evening, something inside her ached. She didn't know what it was, maybe just exhaustion, maybe the sense that this man saw more than anyone, even without eyes, and that she herself was beginning to see something the whole world insisted on ignoring. Zainab didn't know it yet, but the story growing there between fried fritters and cups of water was about to take a turn that would change her life forever. "Papa, Papa, give me 2 fritters and porridge with milk," shouted one of the schoolboys, tossing a crumpled 100 naira note onto the wooden counter before he even stopped running. Zainab laughed, quickly grabbing the still hot fritters from the tray and filling a plastic cup with thick porridge. The boy was already walking off with his snack when she called him back. "Hey, don't forget your change." He stopped, flashed a smile with sugar-stained teeth, and held out his hand. As soon as she handed it over, she turned to prepare the next bowl, when she noticed a shadow falling over part of her stall. "Good afternoon," said a firm, deep voice. Zainab looked up slowly. Standing before her was a tall man, his skin dark like polished coal, broad shoulders, wearing a crisp white shirt that stood out against high-quality black trousers. His shoes shone so brightly they looked like mirrors. He wore dark sunglasses and had a posture that signaled authority or money, or both. "Good afternoon, sir," she replied automatically, wiping her hand on her apron. "How can I help you?" The man didn't answer right away. His eyes, hidden behind his glasses, were fixed on the right side of the stall, where Mallam Musa sat as usual, head down, hands resting on his cane. The air seemed to condense. Time paused for a moment. Zainab looked back and forth between the two, confused. The tall man didn't take his eyes off the old man. Mallam Musa, for his part, remained still, but something about how he held his cane had changed. His fingers had gone stiff, as if he had suddenly caught a familiar scent in the air. "What would you like, sir?" Zainab asked, trying to break the strange silence. The man took a while to respond. Then, without taking his eyes off the old man, he said in a softer tone, "A cup of pap, and 2 fritters, with plenty of milk, please." She prepared the order quickly, glancing at him now and then. His expression seemed unsettled, or maybe confused. When she handed him the tray, he took it with one hand, but the other was trembling slightly. "Is everything all right?" she dared to ask as she gave him his change. He looked at her for the first time. Zainab shivered. There was something in that man's gaze, even through the glasses, that made her uneasy, like he knew too much. "You serve that old man every day?" he asked, his voice gentler now. She was caught off guard by the question, but nodded. "Yes, every day. He never asks, just shows up, sits down, and I give what I can. Sometimes just water, sometimes food." The man didn't reply. He just looked at Mallam Musa once more, pressed his lips together, turned and walked back to his car. A black SUV with tinted windows and a paint job so glossy it reflected the sunlight like a mirror. The driver opened the door quickly, and the man got in without saying another word. In seconds, the vehicle glided into traffic and disappeared. Zainab stood still, watching the dust rise behind the car. Then she turned and looked at Mallam Musa, still sitting in the same place. But something about him had changed too. The bowl of porridge was still full in his lap. He hadn't started eating. His hands were wrapped tightly around the cup, but his fingers trembled slightly. "Mallam, are you all right?" she asked, approaching. He didn't respond right away. Then, in a voice she had never heard from him before, he murmured, "He was here, wasn't he?" Zainab looked confused. "Who?" "The man. That one." His voice faltered. "Tall. Shoes that speak when they walk." Strong perfume. She got goosebumps. Yes, he came. Bought pap. He stared at you for a long time. The old man bowed his head even more. For a moment, it seemed like the words had run dry. Then he simply said, Zainab wanted to ask more, but something in his expression stopped her. Malam Musa was never much of a talker, but that day he seemed quieter than usual, a silence that weighed. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind. Zainab kept serving customers, washing utensils, cleaning bowls, handing out change. But her mind kept returning to that moment, the rich man's stare, the way he locked eyes on the blind man, and how, after that, Malam Musa seemed off. The sun was already setting when she returned to the front stool and noticed that Malam Musa had left earlier than usual. The bowl was empty, but the cup of water remained full on the bench, untouched. She frowned. The next morning, Zainab woke up earlier than usual. She made the porridge with extra care, added milk, cut banana slices, picked 2 larger fritters. She reached the stall before sunrise, cleaned everything more thoroughly, organized the bowls, filled the blue water drum with fresh ice water. 7 o'clock. Nothing. 8. No sign. 9:30. The bench remained empty. Zainab grew anxious. She wiped the same spot on the counter over and over, kept glancing up and down the street. Her eyes searched every passerby. Around 10:30 she couldn't take it anymore. "Auntie Folake," she called, leaning toward the fruit lady next door. "Have you seen Malam Musa today?" The woman looked around, then waved her hand. "That blind man? No. Maybe he went to find another sidewalk. People like that drift around like dust." Zainab didn't find it funny. She took the cup of water and placed it on the bench. Next to it, she set the bowl of porridge, now slightly cold. She sat facing the empty space, feeling a strange tightness in her chest. And for the first time since meeting Malam Musa, she waited, and the old blind man didn't come. "Hey, kid," Zainab called out, stopping one of the boys selling cold water on the street. "Have you seen the old blind man who usually sits here by my stall?" The boy paused, shifted the sack on his shoulder, and looked toward the empty bench. "Malam? Haven't seen him today. Not yesterday either." "Not yesterday?" Zainab repeated, surprised. "No, ma'am, I think he's really gone," the boy replied, already walking off down the hot, dusty road. Zainab stood still, staring at the bench as if expecting him to appear out of thin air. The bowl of porridge she had prepared so carefully that morning was still there. Now cold, the cup of water, sweating from the long hours in the sun, trembled slightly in the warm breeze drifting between the stalls. It was the second day in a row with no sign of Malam Musa. The first day she tried not to worry. Sometimes he was late, other times he was sick and didn't show up until late afternoon. But now, something was wrong. Something inside her said this silence was more than just a delay. She stood up, crossed the street, and went over to Auntie Folake, who was slicing guavas with a dull knife. "Auntie, are you sure you didn't see Malam Musa yesterday? Really sure?" The woman looked up and shrugged. "I already told you, girl. He probably found another spot. Those old beggars drift around like the wind. Maybe he got tired of your face." Zainab didn't smile. He's never missed a day. Not even when it rained, not even when he was sick. The woman shrugged again and went back to slowly cutting the ripe fruit. "Then maybe he died. God rest his soul if that's the case." Zainab shivered. She returned to her stall, but she couldn't focus. She burned a batch of fritters, forgot to give a customer their change, nearly knocked over the water drum. Her body was present, but her mind was far away. That afternoon she decided to search farther. She left a friend in charge of the stall for a few hours and walked the nearby streets, asking around on every corner. "Have you seen an old blind man with a cane, a white cloth over his eyes? Malam Musa, the one who just sits quietly? The one who's always on the school street?" Most shook their heads. "Haven't seen him in days, sis. He really vanished. Maybe life knocked him down and he left. Or maybe he starved to death, which is more likely." Each answer hit Zainab like a hammer to the soul. Every "I haven't seen him" made her fear grow a little more. It wasn't just worry. It was a strange kind of pain, a hollow feeling like a quiet part of her day had been ripped out without warning. On the way back, she passed a group of children playing in the dirt. One of them, a girl with colorful braids, recognized her. "Auntie Zainab, isn't the old man from your bench coming back?" She stopped. "Why do you ask?" "Because he always gave me the fritters you left for him when he didn't finish everything." Zainab smiled sadly. "If he comes back, I'll tell him to save one for you, okay?" "Okay," the girl said, returning to her game. Back at the stall, Zainab sat on the same little stool as always, facing the wooden bench that now felt like a silent altar. The bowl was still there, untouched, and the cup still held water. She didn't move them. She left them there, as if awaiting a ghost's visit. That night, Zainab could barely sleep. She lay on her thin mattress, staring at the dark ceiling of her one-room apartment. The hum of distant generators buzzed in her ears like mosquitoes. Outside, dogs barked, children cried, but inside there was only silence. She got up and walked to the small wooden window. She opened it slowly. The night's hot breeze brushed past her like a sigh. "Where are you, Malam?" she whispered, resting her chin on the sill. She looked up at the cloudy sky and spotted a single star between the clouds. "You promised you'd be back. You said you'd be back. Every day." Her hands gripped the edge of the window. Something inside her was screaming that this wasn't just a typical disappearance. It wasn't abandonment or a change of location. It was absence with weight, a vanishing with purpose. The next morning, Zainab opened the stall as usual, but her movements were automatic. Her eyes kept drifting toward the empty corner of the sidewalk. When a customer accidentally sat on the bench, she quickly said, "That bench is reserved." No one understood, but she did. By midday, her body was already giving up. She didn't smile like before. She didn't joke with customers. She served mechanically, her soul elsewhere. When a woman asked, "Hey, you're not serving the blind man today?" Zainab simply answered in a whisper, "He didn't come." The bench remained empty. The porridge grew cold, the water evaporated, and Zainab stayed there, waiting. As if she were waiting for more than just a blind old man. She was waiting for meaning, waiting for answers. But all that came was silence, a silence that whispered that life was about to change, and that the world she knew, simple, harsh, but honest, was about to reveal something no one in that neighborhood could have ever imagined. The sound of tires screeching on the dusty asphalt came to a stop right in front of Zainab's stall. She looked up, distracted, her hand still inside the bowl of flour she was preparing for the fritters. The car wasn't one she recognized from the neighborhood. It was a sleek black sedan, gleaming in the sun like it had just rolled out of a TV commercial. Before she could say anything, the back door opened slowly. A tall man stepped out, wearing a crisp red dress shirt, dark trousers, polished shoes, and a flat-brimmed cap. He didn't say a word. Zainab frowned. She had never seen him before. He didn't look at the food or at the customers. He walked straight toward her and stopped in front of the stall with a serious expression. No greeting, no smile, just a hand extended with a brown envelope. "Here," he said curtly, "read this, and don't tell anyone." Before Zainab could ask what it was, he spun on his heels, returned to the car, and got into the back seat. The vehicle pulled away smoothly, leaving a thin cloud of dust hanging in the air. Zainab stood frozen for a few seconds, staring at the envelope. It was thick, sealed with clear tape, heavier than it should have been, like it held more than just paper. She looked around. The street carried on like normal. No one seemed to have noticed. With trembling hands, she carefully broke the seal. Inside was just a single sheet of paper, folded in thirds. When she unfolded it, she read in neat short letters, "Go to the White Palace Hotel at 3 p.m. Tell no one. From a friend." Her heart raced. "White Palace Hotel," she whispered to herself. She'd never been inside any hotel, much less one with a name like that. But she had heard of it. One of the most upscale hotels in Lagos, where politicians and business people held meetings in air-conditioned halls, and where people walked in wearing designer suits and dresses. She folded the note, placed it back in the envelope, and pressed it against her chest. Her heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. She glanced around, half expecting to see the man in red returning to explain. But the car had vanished around the corner. "What does this mean?" she murmured. "Who sent me this note?" She tried to return to her work, but it was no use. She mismeasured ingredients, burned the first batch of fritters, forgot to give change to an older woman who left complaining. Her head was somewhere else, and her eyes kept drifting back to the envelope in her bag. Around 1 p.m., Auntie Folake from the neighboring stall came over. "Zainab, are you sick? You're as pale as flour." She forced a smile. "I'm okay, Auntie. Just a little tired." "You want me to stay here for a while so you can rest?" Zainab hesitated, then nodded. "Just for an hour. I need to take care of something." She rushed to the back, locked her small wooden door with the old padlock, and washed her face. She opened the envelope again as if the words might have changed, but they were still there, firm, silent, strange. At exactly 3 p.m., she looked at the plastic watch on her wrist. 1:47 p.m. She changed out of her stained skirt into another, slightly less faded, tied her hair up with a clean scarf, rubbed baby oil on her cheeks, and took a deep breath. "God, go with me," she whispered, looking upward. She locked the stall and hung up a handwritten sign, "Be right back." She walked down to the main road and flagged the first Kiki, motorized tricycle, that passed. "White Palace Hotel, please," she said as she climbed in. The driver turned his head, surprised. "What? You sure?" Zainab only nodded, clutching the brown envelope against her lap. The ride felt longer than usual. Lagos buzzed with its usual chaos, honking horns, street vendors, motorcycles weaving dangerously through traffic. But inside the Kiki, it was silent. Zainab kept her eyes fixed on the window, watching buildings, signs, and people blur past. 15 minutes later, the vehicle turned onto a wide avenue lined with tall buildings. Up ahead, a gleaming facade appeared, White Palace Hotel. She held her breath. The building was enormous. Glass windows reflected the sky, marble walls gleamed, decorative fountains burbled out front. At the entrance, 2 security guards stood with arms crossed, wearing dark sunglasses. It all looked like something out of a movie. Zainab stepped out slowly. Her heart now beat in her throat. One of the guards approached. "Good afternoon, madam. Who are you here to see?" She pulled the note from the envelope and held it out wordlessly. The man read it quickly, then smiled with a small nod. "Ah, Miss Zainab, they're expecting you. Please go in." The glass door opened automatically, revealing a cool, quiet lobby with marble floors and the scent of expensive cologne in the air. Before she could take it all in, a man in a black suit appeared from inside and gestured politely. "Please follow me." Zainab followed him silently. The sound of his dress shoes echoed down the polished corridor. They turned right, then left, and stopped in front of a tall wooden door with a gold handle. The man turned to her. "Go ahead. He's waiting for you." She widened her eyes. "He? Yes. Everything's fine. You're safe." Zainab swallowed hard, placed her hand on the doorknob and took a deep breath. She slowly pushed the door open. Inside was a spacious room, softly lit by natural light streaming in through tall windows. White curtains swayed gently with the air conditioning. A thick rug covered the floor, and at the center of the room a man sat in a wheelchair facing the window. Zainab stopped. Time froze. "Malam Musa," she whispered. The man turned slowly. But this wasn't the same Malam Musa from the sidewalk. His skin was clean, his face freshly shaved, his hair carefully combed. He wore a white linen shirt with gold buttons. On his wrist, a luxury watch glinted with metallic flashes. Even sitting down, his presence filled the room. He smiled gently. "Come in, Zainab." She took 2 steps forward, her hands trembling. Is it really you?" The man nodded. "It's me. But my real name isn't Malam Musa." She took a step back, heart pounding. "It's not?" He took off the sunglasses resting on the table and looked at Zainab with steady eyes. "My name is Alhaji Mustafa Lawal, and I am a millionaire." Zainab was speechless, and in that moment she knew Nothing in her life would ever be the same. Zainab sank her heels into the thick carpet of the room, as if the floor might vanish at any moment. Her head was spinning, her heart pounding in her throat, and her eyes locked onto the man sitting in front of her. It was him, the same blind old man who used to sit on the dusty sidewalk of Ajegunle, the same one she fed every single day. But now, there were no rags, no white cloth over his eyes, no dust caked on his face, no trace of poverty. He was clean, elegant, confident, Alhaji Mustafa Lawal as he had just introduced himself. She felt her knees threaten to give out. This is some kind of joke?" she asked, her voice barely audible. You could always walk?" Alhaji Mustafa didn't answer immediately. He looked at Zainab with calm eyes, as if he understood the storm she felt inside. Then, placing both hands on the arms of the wheelchair, he pushed himself up in one steady motion. Zainab's eyes widened. Her parted lips trembled. The sight felt impossible. You can walk?" she repeated, stunned. He nodded. "Yes, I always could." She stepped back. "But why? Why pretend to be blind? Why pretend to be poor?" Alhaji Mustafa walked slowly to a nearby armchair. He sat down calmly, laced his fingers together in his lap, and replied, his voice firm but gentle. "Because I needed to see who still has a good heart in this world, who gives when no one is watching, who helps without expecting anything in return. I was tired of living among masks, among flatterers and opportunists." He paused. Zainab still stood, not knowing whether to run or cry. "I created a personal project," he continued, "where once a year I live as someone on the street, with a visible disability. I pick a place at random and spend time watching how people treat me. You were the only one, Zainab. The only one." She brought her hands to her mouth. Her eyes began to fill with tears. "I never imagined that." Her voice broke. I just didn't want you to go hungry." He smiled. "And that's exactly why I chose you." Emotion overcame Zainab. She slowly sat down, nearly collapsing into one of the chairs in front of him. The tears now flowed freely. "I didn't know you were someone important. I didn't want anything in return. I just thought, no one deserves to be forgotten." Alhaji Mustafa leaned forward slightly, his gaze deep. "You gave me food when I was hungry. You gave me water when the day was hot. You gave me dignity when everyone else looked away. You didn't mock me, didn't pity me, didn't try to use me as a spectacle." Zainab could only cry silently. He continued, "You called me Malam Musa with such respect, and you shared your own food with me even when it was your last plate. That, my dear, is rare." He then opened a drawer on the side table and pulled out a black folder. He took out an envelope and placed it on the table, sliding it gently toward her. "This is a gift from me," he said. "It's not everything, but it's the beginning." Zainab wiped her eyes with the back of her hand before picking up the envelope. Inside were several official-looking documents. Her name, Zainab Hassan, appeared prominently, followed by the title, "Owner, Zainab's Table Restaurant." "I don't understand," she whispered. "This is a restaurant," Alhaji Mustafa replied. "The best one in the Lekki area, built over the last few months, prepared just for you. Fully registered, staff hired, kitchen ready, all in your name." Zainab placed her hand over her chest, gasping. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," he said with a smile. "Your kindness already spoke for you." For several minutes, silence filled the room, broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioner and the quiet, fast beat of Zainab's heart as she tried to believe this wasn't a dream. "But why so much?" and she finally asked. "I only gave porridge and fritters, shared a cup of water. That doesn't add up to a restaurant." "You gave something rarer than all of that," Alhaji Mustafa answered. "You gave compassion, love without strings attached. You cared for me when no one else did. You're the kind of person the world needs to see thrive, because you'll keep spreading that light." She lowered her eyes and smiled through tears. "I promise I won't waste any of this. I know you won't, he said, and that's why tomorrow I want to show you. Show me? Yes, he stood again, with a graceful gesture. I want you to see the place with your own eyes. See where your actions have taken you. I want you to walk into that space with your head held high and see just how much you're worth. Zainab nodded, moved. He walked to the door, opened it gently and said, Tomorrow, at 9, a car will pick you up. It'll be waiting at the corner of your street. Everything is ready. She stood, still in disbelief. Thank you, sir. He turned back. Call me Mustafa. No need for Malam anymore. Zainab smiled shyly and walked to the door, clutching the envelope to her chest. Before leaving, she looked back one last time. He was still there, standing with a soft smile on his lips. Thank you, Mustafa. He nodded. See you tomorrow, Zainab. And as she stepped through that door, she knew she was leaving behind more than just a hotel room. She was leaving behind a lifetime of quiet sacrifices and stepping into another, one made of unexpected rewards, but deeply deserved. The morning sun gently touched the walls of Ajagunle as Zainab stood in front of her closed food stall. She wore her best dress, a simple, clean, well-pressed blue outfit, and carried the bag with the envelope of documents Alhaji Mustafa had given her the day before. She looked at the padlock she had always used to close the stall and smiled with a mixture of nostalgia and disbelief. Her fingers ran across them one last time. Thank you for everything, she whispered softly, as if saying goodbye to an old friend. At exactly 9 a.m., a sleek black car turned the corner slowly. Zainab recognized it instantly. A security guard stepped out, opened the back door with a small bow and said, Good morning, Madam Zainab. Are you ready? She swallowed hard, nodded and stepped into the car. The seat was soft, the air conditioning smelled of new leather, and the silence inside the vehicle felt like a warm embrace. As the car pulled away from the neighborhood, Zainab looked out the window at the world she knew slowly fading behind her. Every alley, every shop, every wooden stall was a memory. Am I really awake? She wondered. Is this all real? The city pulsed outside. Lagos with its endless rush, engines roaring, street vendors shouting prices, impatient horns blaring. But inside the car, it was just her racing heart, and the memory of the man she had once called Malam Musa. After about 30 minutes, the car turned onto a wide, quiet avenue. The sidewalks were clean, the store signs were modern with international names, tall glass buildings reflected the clear morning sky. Zainab's eyes widened. This is Lekki. The car slowed and stopped in front of a large property where a two-story building stood, white with floor-to-ceiling glass windows and gleaming golden doors under the sun. The garden in front was immaculate, with flowers arranged by color and a small fountain trickling water at the entrance. Zainab brought her hand to her mouth. On the front, an elegant sign read, Zainab's Table, Flavor with Soul. She couldn't move. The security guard opened the car door. We've arrived, madam. She stepped out with trembling legs. The air felt lighter here, as if time moved differently. A second car pulled up behind, and from it stepped Alhaji Mustafa, wearing a traditional white Yoruba outfit with gold detailing and a calm smile on his face. Welcome, he said, extending his hand. Zainab looked at him, eyes misty. This is real. It's more real than you can imagine. And it's yours, all of it. She still couldn't believe it. The impressive building before her bore her name. Her name. She had never imagined seeing those letters anywhere outside of a school notebook. Come in, he said. It's time to see your new home. She walked through the garden as if floating. As soon as she stepped inside, she let out a breath. The floor was white marble, the ceiling high with modern chandeliers that sparkled like stars. The walls were lined with light wood panels, decorated with framed art and gold accents. The main dining hall was spacious, with round tables made of thick glass, chairs upholstered in soft fabric, and linen curtains that let in gentle, natural light. At the back, a spiral staircase led to the second floor, where a sign read, Executive Office, Zainab Hassan. She brought a hand to her mouth, overcome with emotion. Upstairs is your office, your command center, private bathroom, air conditioning, a new computer, direct phone line, even a balcony. Zainab just shook her head, speechless. "Here," said Al-Haji Mustafa, pointing to the kitchen in the back. "We have the best culinary equipment in the country. Industrial stoves, refrigerators, freezers, fully stocked pantry, brand new dishes and utensils." Zainab looked at the uniformed staff already moving efficiently inside, chefs in white hats, attentive assistants, smiling servers, all ready, all waiting for her. "They know who you are," he said. "They've been trained to work with love and excellence, because that's what you represent, service with heart." She wiped her face discreetly. "I never dreamed of anything like this. All I wanted was for no one to go hungry. Just that." "And that's exactly why you were given all this," he replied, "because those who plant compassion reap greatness." He then pulled a small keychain from his pocket and handed it to her. "These are the keys to the building." Zainab held them with both hands like a treasure. "Starting today, you're the owner of one of the most complete and beautiful restaurants in the city, and you have the freedom to run it as you wish." She looked around, trying to take it all in. The kitchen, the dining hall, the uniforms, the fresh scent in the air, it all felt like a dream come to life. "And what if I make mistakes?" she asked quietly. "What if I don't know how to handle all this?" Al-Haji Mustafa placed a hand on her shoulder. "Mistakes are part of the journey, but your heart will guide you. You're a woman who cared for a blind man without expecting a thing in return. That already makes you more prepared than many wealthy people I know." She closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath and opened them with a small but genuine smile. "I accept. I'm going to make this work." "I know you will," he said, smiling. "And now you won't be cooking in a street stall or serving food alone. You'll lead, you'll inspire, you'll transform." Zainab nodded, and for the first time in her life she felt powerful. "I have an idea," she said suddenly, her eyes lighting up. "What is it?" "I want to put a sign in the front hall. A phrase. Something people see the moment they walk in. Something that reminds them why this place exists." "And what would it say?" he asked, intrigued. She thought for a second. "Here every plate holds a little bit of love, because love is what brought all of this to life." Al-Haji Mustafa nodded, his eyes misty. "Perfect." That night, Zainab returned home with a full heart and a light spirit. She knew the journey was just beginning, and now with that restaurant under her care, she could keep doing what she believed in most, feeding people, not just with food, but with dignity. And as she walked along the sidewalk back to her tiny apartment, she looked up at the clear sky, smiled at the stars and whispered, "Thank you, Malam Musa." Or rather, Mustafa. "Thank you for seeing me." The sun had barely risen, but the parking lot behind the restaurant was already buzzing with activity. Zainab adjusted her white headscarf, dressed in a simple cotton tunic, as she went over final details with the manager. "Everything is ready, madam," he said with a respectful smile. "The team is in position, and the van driver is waiting for instructions." Zainab nodded. "Great. We leave in 5 minutes. And remind everyone, today, we're not just delivering food, we're delivering dignity." The man gave a firm nod and walked away. At the far end of the parking lot, parked beside a row of ornamental plants, a brand new white van gleamed under the soft morning light. Painted in elegant, colorful lettering along the side were the words, "Table of Hope, Zainab Food Project, Feeding with Love." Zainab looked at the van and felt her heart swell with gratitude. It was the living extension of everything she believed in. With Mustafa's financial support, she hadn't stopped at the luxury restaurant. Without hesitation, she used part of the profits to start a social project of her own. Every week, the van would head to strategic points in the city, vulnerable communities, forgotten parks, shelters, underpasses, bringing meals, water, bread, and fruit to those who had nothing. And she insisted on going personally, every single time. "Let's go, team!" she called out, her voice firm yet warm. In minutes, the van pulled out, followed by a support vehicle carrying volunteers. The first stop was under a busy bridge, where dozens of unhoused people were already waiting. sitting or standing, their faces filled with anticipation. Some carried bags, others protected their young children with cloth slings. Many of them already knew Zainab was coming. As soon as the van doors opened, smiles began to appear. She stepped down, wearing a white apron over her tunic, and stood beside a fold-out table already set up. Behind her, boxes of hot meals and bottles of water were neatly organized. "Good morning," she called with a wide smile. "There's food for everyone. Today's a day to eat well." A barefoot little girl was the first to approach. Her hair was tangled, her eyes shy. Zainab knelt and handed her a food box. "Here you go, sweetheart, you deserve this." The girl took it with both hands and smiled, timid but bright. "Thank you, Auntie." Soon the line grew. Men, women, elderly, youth. Zainab handed each plate with a direct gaze and a smile. It wasn't just food, it was presence. It was care. A reminder that they were not forgotten. One of the volunteers, a young man named Dile, approached as she handed a loaf of bread to an older man on crutches. "Madam Zainab, may I ask you something?" She turned to him. "Of course." "Why do you still come with us? You run a luxury restaurant now. You could just send staff." Zainab paused for a moment, then looked at the still long line and replied, "Because this is how it all began. Sitting on the edge of a sidewalk, handing out food with my own hands. It wouldn't make sense to leave that behind now that I can do more." Dele nodded, moved. "And also," she continued, glancing up at the clear sky above the bridge, "because someone saw me when no one else did. Someone believed in me when all I had was one plate and a cup of water. And I promised myself that if I ever got the chance, I'd multiply what I'd received." She looked toward the end of the line and saw an elderly man sitting alone, very thin, eyes vacant, his shirt torn. She picked up a meal box and a bottle of water and walked over to him personally. She knelt gently and placed the package in his hands. "You're not forgotten, okay? Eat well. You deserve this." The man simply nodded, silent tears tracing down his cheeks. For hours, the team handed out meals. Children with dust-covered hands, mothers carrying babies, men weary from endless walking. Zainab felt no exhaustion. She felt a kind of strength that rose from within, as if each act of giving was a prayer. When the last plate was handed out and the van began to reload used supplies, Zainab stood for a moment on the sidewalk. The sun was high now, the pavement hot, the city alive around her. She looked up at the sky, as she always did. "Thank you, Mustafa," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Thank you for helping me see who I was." Back at the restaurant later that day, she stepped into her office. On the wall hung a photo of her smiling, holding a plate of food. Below it, a plaque with the phrase she had chosen, "Here, every plate holds a little bit of love, because love is what brought all of this to life." Zainab sat down, removed her headscarf, and took a deep breath. Outside, waiters served businessmen, families, and tourists. The kitchen buzzed with life. The restaurant was a success. But what made it all worthwhile was what she did afterward. With empty hands, she fed people. With a full heart, she gave back hope. And maybe, somewhere out there, in the shade of a wall, sitting in silence, there was another Malam Musa waiting for someone to see him the right way. And if Zainab knew that, she'd be back the next day, with a warm meal and a smile. Because, as she often said, the kindness that saved my life is the same kindness I want to pour into the world. One plate at a time,